The water was 23 feet deep in most places, murky green, and everyone said it was worthless. But when Iris Kovac held her grandfather's surveyor's map up to the light in the county clerk's office, she saw lines that didn't match the abandoned pit everyone else was looking at. She saw a fortune. 6 weeks earlier, the auction on the courthouse steps in Lawrence County, Indiana, lasted 4 minutes. Property 12-088-431-009, 17 acres, March 3, 2024, 2:14 p.m. Abandoned quarry, flooded in 1987, no road access, no utilities. The auctioneer's voice was bored. Folks, this is the old Brecker pit. Been underwater for 37 years. Starting bid is $1,000. Do I hear 1,000? Iris Kovac, 26 years old, stood in the back wearing work boots that used to be her grandfather's. She held a cashier's check for $3,200, everything left after selling her car and maxing out a credit card. Her hands didn't shake. Around her, men in Carhartt jackets whispered and smirked. They knew the quarry. Limestone operation from the 1940s, worked out by the 70s, then the bottom flooded when they hit groundwater. The company went bankrupt. The land sat. 1,000, Iris said clearly. A man near the front turned to look at her. Gil Stratton owned the big active quarry 5 miles north. He smiled like watching a mistake happen in slow motion. 1,500, he said lazily. 2,000, Iris responded. Stratton's smile faded slightly. He studied her. 3,000. Iris met his eyes. 3,200. Silence. Stratton shrugged and turned away. The gavel fell. She signed papers in a room that smelled like old radiators. The clerk, a thin woman named Patricia, slid the deed across. Honey, you know that pit's been flooded since before you were born? Yes, ma'am. Can't drain it. The water table's too high. You just bought a pond with rocks around it. Iris folded the deed carefully. My grandfather worked that quarry in 1974. Patricia's expression softened. Kovac. Your grandfather was Anton Kovac. Yes, ma'am. He was the foreman there, right before it closed. Good man. She paused. I'm sorry, but even he couldn't make that pit profitable. That's why they shut it down. Iris nodded politely and left. In the parking lot, Gil Stratton leaned against a white pickup. He was maybe 50, weathered face, expensive boots. Miss Kovac, I'll be straight with you. I bid to be polite, keep the price from being insulting. But that pit's played out. If you want to sell it back for what you paid, I'll buy it. Save you the headache. Not for sale, Iris said. There's nothing down there but water and worked over stone. Then why'd you bid? Stratton's jaw tightened. Good luck pumping 17 acres dry on a retail worker's salary. He knew she'd been working at the Lowe's in Bedford. Small towns kept track. After he drove off, Iris sat in her dead grandfather's truck, a 1992 Ford Ranger, 198,000 miles, rusted wheel wells. She pulled out the lockbox she'd found in his closet after the funeral, the one locked with a combination that was her grandmother's birthday. Inside, the surveyor's map from 1952, a geological report dated August 1974, and a letter in her grandfather's handwriting on the back of a quarry safety notice. Iris, if you're reading this, I'm gone. The Brecker pit has a secret. In July 1974, I found a limestone vein nobody else knew about. Different formation, 50 feet below the working floor, premium quality. I tried to convince the owners to dig deeper. They said the cost wasn't worth it. 3 weeks later, we hit the aquifer and the pit flooded. They blamed me for pushing too deep. But I know what I saw. The vein is there. The report is in this box. The map shows where. Don't let them tell you that land is worthless. Your grandmother made me promise not to waste our savings fighting the company in court. But you didn't make that promise. I'm sorry I can't help you dig. Trust the geology. Trust yourself. The geological report was stamped by the Indiana Geological Survey. Page 7 showed core samples. High calcium limestone, 94% purity. Ideal for agricultural lime, industrial applications, construction. Estimated deposit, 800,000 to 1.2 million tons. At 2024 prices, maybe $12 million in the ground. If she could reach it. Iris drove out to the property that evening. The access road was overgrown, brambles scraping the truck's sides. The quarry opened suddenly, a massive crater filled with still green water, limestone walls rising 30 feet on 3 sides, trees growing at broken angles from cracks in the stone. Beautiful. Haunting. Impossible. She walked the rim as the sun dropped. On the eastern wall, she found her grandfather's initials carved into the stone, AK, and below them, an arrow pointing down toward the water. That night, she called every pump rental company within 50 miles. The cheapest quote to drain the quarry, $48,000, and no guarantee it wouldn't just refill from groundwater. She had $17 in her checking account, but she also had the map, the report, and her grandfather's faith. The next morning, she went to Bedford Public Library and read everything about flooded quarry reclamation. Most methods required money she didn't have. But one paper, written by a hydrogeologist in Kentucky, described a different approach. Don't fight the water, redirect it. If she could isolate the main aquifer feed and channel it around the vein location, she might be able to create a dry working zone without draining the entire pit. It would require precision drilling, careful engineering, and equipment she couldn't afford. But it was possible. The mockery started immediately. Iris filed for a mining permit on March 10th. By March 12th, everyone in Lawrence County seemed to know. At the Lowe's where she still worked part-time, customers whispered. Her manager, a man named Derek, called her into the back office. "Iris, people are saying you bought the Brecker pit." "I did." "To do what exactly?" "Reopen it." Derek's face cycled through confusion and pity. "That quarry's underwater. It's been dead for almost 40 years. I know what I'm doing." "Do you?" His voice wasn't unkind. "Look, I like you. You're a good worker. But you can't throw your money away on." "It's my money," Iris said quietly. He sighed. "Don't quit this job. You're going to need it." She didn't quit. She needed every dollar. Gil Stratton showed up at the quarry on March 15th, parked his truck at the rim, and watched her take measurements. She was using surveying equipment borrowed from a retired engineer who'd known her grandfather. A transit level, measuring tape, notebook. "You're serious about this?" Stratton called down. Iris didn't look up. "Yes, sir. There's nothing viable down there. The company stripped everything worth taking. They worked the upper formation. There's a deeper vein." Stratton walked closer. His voice changed, less amused, more interested. "You have geological data?" "Yes." "Can I see it?" "No." His face hardened. "Miss Kovac, I've been in this business 30 years. If there was premium stone in that pit, someone would have found it. My grandfather found it. Nobody listened. Anton was a good foreman, but he wasn't a geologist." Iris finally met his eyes. He had it surveyed. Independent analysis. High calcium limestone, premium grade, estimated 800,000 tons minimum. Stratton went very still. "If that's true, why didn't the company go after it?" "They hit the aquifer 3 weeks after the survey. Flooded before they could adjust the plan. And you think you can reach it where they couldn't?" "I'm going to try." Stratton studied her for a long moment. "I'll buy your data. $20,000. You walk away, I take the risk." "No. 50,000. It's not for sale." His expression turned cold. "You can't afford the equipment. You can't afford the permits. You're going to fail, and when you do, I'll buy this land at auction for pennies. Or you can take my offer now and walk away with money in your pocket." Iris turned back to her measurements. "Have a good day, Mr. Stratton." He left, but she knew he'd be back. The engineering problem consumed her. She spent nights in the library, studying hydrology, aquifer behavior, quarry dewatering techniques. The Kentucky paper became her Bible. Isolate the source, redirect flow, create a local depression cone. But she needed core samples to confirm the aquifer's entry point. Professional drilling, $8,000 minimum. She had $312. On March 22nd, she met with a loan officer at Bedford Community Bank. The woman, Karen Shun, reviewed Iris's application with a neutral expression. "Miss Kovac, you're asking for $60,000 to reopen a flooded quarry with no business plan, no experience, and no collateral beyond the land itself." "I have geological data showing, data from 1974. Karen's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm sorry, the bank can't approve this." Iris had expected that answer. Still, it felt like a door slamming. She tried for more banks. Same result. On March 28th, sitting in the truck at the quarry's edge, Iris called the retired engineer who'd lent her the surveying equipment. His name was Howard Price, 71 years old, worked with her grandfather in the 70s. "Howard, I need core samples to map the aquifer." I can't afford professional drilling. Is there any other way? Silence on the line. Then, there's a hand auger method. Slow, difficult, but cheap. You'd need a truck-mounted drill rig. I have one in my barn. Hasn't been used in 15 years. You're welcome to it if you can get it running. What would that cost? Your time. And some parts, maybe $200. I can do that. She spent a week rebuilding the drill rig in Howard's barn. He supervised, taught her the mechanics, told her stories about her grandfather. Anton knew stone like nobody I ever met. He could read a rock face and tell you what was 10 feet down. When he said there was premium lime in that pit, I believed him. Still do. By April 5th, the rig was running. She mounted it on the ranger's bed and drove it to the quarry. The drilling was brutal. Each core sample took hours, positioning the rig, driving the auger down through rock and clay and water-saturated sediment, pulling up cylinders of stone and mud. Her shoulders screamed. Her hands blistered, then bled, then calloused. But the samples told the story. She found the aquifer feed on the northern wall, 42 feet below the water surface, and 18 feet beyond that. Exactly where her grandfather's map indicated, the cores showed pure, dense, high-calcium limestone. The vein was real. On April 12th, Gil Stratton returned with 2 men in suits. They stood at the rim while Iris worked below. "Miss Kovac," Stratton called down. "These gentlemen represent my company. Final offer, $100,000 for the property and all geological data. Cash, today." Iris stood slowly, covered in mud, holding a core sample. "No, you're being foolish." "Maybe." One of the suits spoke up. "Miss Kovac, we've reviewed county records. You're 3 weeks behind on property taxes. We can wait for the county to auction this land, or you can sell now. Your choice." Iris's stomach dropped. She'd forgotten the tax bill in the chaos. $418. Might as well be $4,000. "I'll pay the taxes," she said. "With what?" Stratton's voice was almost kind. "Be reasonable." That evening, Iris sold her grandfather's surveying equipment to Howard for $500. He tried to refuse payment, but she insisted. She paid the tax bill the next morning. She had $82 left. The answer came from the water itself. On April 19th, studying her core samples in Howard's workshop, Iris noticed something. The aquifer feeding the quarry wasn't a massive underground river. It was a relatively small seep, maybe 200 gallons per minute. Significant, but not catastrophic. And the limestone vein sat in a natural structural high, a slight dome in the bedrock. If she could install a horizontal drain to intercept the seep before it reached the vein location and pump out the isolated pocket, she wouldn't need to drain the entire quarry. She'd need piping, a sump pump, and access to the underwater rock face. Howard listened to her plan, then nodded slowly. That could work, but you need a diver to install the drain pipes. And you need them placed precisely where the whole thing fails. "I know. Do you know how to dive?" "No." "Then you've got another problem." Iris spent that night researching. Commercial diving services, $3,000 minimum. She had $82. But there was a scuba certification course offered through the community college in Bloomington. $240 for weekends. If she could borrow gear. She called Howard. "Can you teach me to work underwater? I'm 71 years old, Iris. But you used to do underwater inspections, right? For the quarries." A long pause. "That was 40 years ago. Please." Another pause. "You're as stubborn as your grandfather." "All right, but we do this safe. No shortcuts." She got certified by May 10th. Howard gave her his old gear, BC vest, regulator, tank that barely passed inspection. They practiced in a flooded gravel pit, then moved to the Brecker quarry. The underwater world was murky and strange. Iris descended along the north wall, following her own measurements, until she found the seep, cold water pushing steadily from a crack in the limestone. Exactly where the cores predicted. Over 3 weeks, working in zero visibility, hands numb, she and Howard installed a perforated drain pipe system, intersecting the seep, channeling it horizontally away from the vein location, directing it to a collection some 40 feet south. The work was exhausting and terrifying. Twice, her regulator partially failed. Once, she got disoriented in the murk and nearly panicked before Howard's hand found her shoulder, guided her to the surface. But by June 1st, the system was installed. She rented an industrial sump pump for $100 she borrowed from Howard. and started pumping out the isolated pocket around the vein location. For 2 days, nothing seemed to happen. Then, on the third day, she descended and saw it. A section of the quarry floor, maybe 30 feet across, no longer underwater. Exposed limestone, streaked with sediment, but dry. She surfaced, gasping, and Howard pulled her onto the makeshift platform they'd built. Did it work? It worked. They sat in silence, breathing hard. The next day, Iris used a rock saw, borrowed from Howard, ancient and loud, to cut sample blocks from the exposed vein. She sent them to 3 independent testing labs. The results came back June 8th. 96% calcium carbonate, premium agricultural and industrial grade, comparable to the best quarries in Indiana. The vein was everything her grandfather said it was. On June 10th, Iris submitted a formal mining plan to the county. On June 15th, Gil Stratton showed up at the quarry and stopped dead when he saw the exposed stone. You actually did it. Iris was marking grid coordinates. Yes, sir. How? Redirected the water. My grandfather's geology was right. Stratton walked closer, examined the exposed limestone, ran his hand over it. His face was unreadable. This is premium stone. Yes, sir. I underestimated you. Most people did. He turned to her. I want to make a different offer. Not to buy you out. Partnership. My company has the equipment, the trucks, the customer base. You have the resource. We split it 60-40, your favor. You maintain ownership. I handle operations. Iris considered. She didn't have the capital to extract and sell the stone herself. Going it alone meant years of struggle, maybe failure. But partnering with Stratton meant security, immediate income, and keeping her grandfather's legacy alive. 65-35, she said. And I want operational oversight. I approve all extraction plans. Stratton smiled slightly. 65-35. You approve plans. Deal. They shook hands over exposed limestone that was supposed to be impossible to reach. The operation started in July. Stratton's company brought in equipment, expanded the dry working zone, and began careful extraction. The stone was exceptional. Every lab confirmed it. Orders came immediately from agricultural suppliers, construction firms, industrial clients. By August, the quarry was producing 200 tons per week. Iris's share, $8,000 weekly. In the first month, she paid back Howard with interest, bought back her grandfather's surveying equipment, and put a down payment on a small house in Bedford. The county extension office wrote an article about her. Local woman reopens abandoned quarry using innovative hydrology. The story mentioned her grandfather, included his name in the headline. On September 3rd, exactly 6 months after the auction, Iris stood at the quarry rim at sunset. The water was still there. Most of the pit remained flooded, but the working zone was dry and active. A crew was loading trucks. The sound of machinery echoed off limestone walls. Howard joined her, hands in his pockets. Your grandfather would be proud. I hope so. He knew that stone was there. He knew it was worth fighting for. Howard paused. You did what he couldn't. You finished it. Iris pulled out her grandfather's letter, read it again in the fading light. Trust the geology. Trust yourself. She folded it carefully and looked at the quarry. No longer abandoned, no longer worthless, no longer a joke. Just good stone, pulled from the earth by someone who believed it was there. Thank you, Grandpa, she said quietly. The trucks kept loading. The work continued. And the water, redirected but not defeated, flowed around the vein that everyone said didn't exist, the vein that was going to change everything.